and watch it later. The whole idea, welcome everyone to Live from Syria sessions. This is a webinar that's going to happen every Sunday morning, the first Sunday of every month, inshallah. And we will have great speakers from our team in Syria. The objective of this webinar is just to give an idea on what's going on from different point of views when it comes to Syrian Forum USA, programs, projects, and strategy in how we tackle the problems that we have on site. From now on, stay tuned on these sessions that's going to happen every Sunday. As I mentioned, it's going to be a fixed date. There is no fundraising. There is no pressure. There is nothing unless you want. But the idea is to keep you tuned and to keep you posted on the recent updates that we have in Syria. From here, we will start with the first session, inshallah, with Dr. Ammar Al-Qahaf. He's a co-founder of Syrian Forum and the head of Umran program in Syria. And without further ado, so let's start and go ahead with Dr. Ammar.
All right. I think now everyone can see the screen. Again, welcome and thank you very much for your time. My name is Ammar Qahaf, and I'm a co-founding board member of the Syrian Forum USA, and speaking to you here from Damascus, Syria. Our team, both from the different programs at the Syrian Forum, have already been and visited the areas of the northeast of Raqqa, Deir ez-Zor, and there are many places in Deir ez-Zor. We used to have access before that to the city of Deir ez-Zor, but now all the way to Bukamal, which is, if you know, on the map, there's the Euphrates River heading down south. Prior to the events that started about almost 2 or 3 weeks ago, the Syrian territory that was controlled by the central government reached the limit of the Euphrates River, which chops up a large chunk of the northeast, which includes 3 provinces that were governed by the Syrian Democratic Forces. Just as a quick background, Syrian Democratic Forces were established in 2016 by the international coalition headed by the United States and other countries to fight ISIS. It never had a mandate to be a Syrian organization that persists and continues. Its purpose was limited to a scope and mission. And so after the fall of the Assad regime, there was a historic agreement in March 10, 2025, by which the SDF would integrate and merge into the central state institutions militarily, administratively, politically, and that things and people in Syria celebrated this as the second major celebrations on the streets. However, the integration process did not move forward for many reasons. Each side is blaming the other. The government says that they have given so many chances and that they have offered all the scenarios, and they expect integration. What integration means that there will be one government controlling all of territory, and there will be a monopoly on the use of weapons, which means there's only one army. And that's one of the main, for any donor, for any investor, for anyone who wants to visit Syria, they want to be comfortable to make sure that there are no loose armed groups walking around in the streets who would cause any kind of instability or unforeseen circumstances that are not comfortable for many people. And so even on the humanitarian level, you have people that want to farm their lands. The Northeast is rich in water, rich in natural resources, both in terms of oil and gas. Not much, but relatively to the west of the Euphrates River, it's relatively much more rich in that. And the access to those areas were limited. These are post-ISIS, although ISIS disappeared about maybe less than 10 years ago from those areas. They have been governed by a local administration locally, which reports back to SDF, which is controlled by primarily controlled by the PKK, which is a group that is registered as a terrorist organization by the United States as well as in Turkey. So it's been causing a lot of troubles, and the troubles are cross-border. They're not limited to the borders of Syria. So what happened since December 8th, fall of the regime? We went through many phases. One was celebrated again March 10. Then there was an agreement on April 1st, which concerned specifically two neighborhoods of Halab, of Aleppo city, Sheikh Maqsood and Shafia. And basically the expectation written in the March 10 agreement that by the end of the year of 2025, that Syria will be united and that local services will be restored and that people will have access to services and so forth. However, this never happened, obviously. And so after the incident in the two neighborhoods in Halab. Halab is the second largest city. It controls about 45% of the economy, the industries. It has a famous historic industrial zone in Halab that produces, 45% of the economy of Syria, if not more, comes from Aleppo. And so Aleppo was held hostage to two neighborhoods, two blocks, very small, had about 200 to 300,000 people, very heavily populated, but embedded with a lot of PKK fighters who refused to leave and who refused to leave the city unarmed. Not the city, the block, the neighborhood block. So there was a quick operation, which we at the Syrian Forum also responded humanitarian-wise to basically there was a request to the residents of those neighborhoods to vacate for about a week or 10 days. They left to other areas. Unfortunately, it was a cold weather time, and that's where Syrian Forum USA had also an emergency fund that, along with many organizations, but I think we were among the 5, 6 organizations with the Ministry of Social Affairs who responded. If you're looking at the map, it's Halab. It's right here. If you see my mouse, I don't know if you're seeing it on the screen. But around Halab, there were two neighborhoods that had a small military operation. They had rockets, snipers, etc. So the government basically could not tolerate. There was a lot of complaints by the local residents. Now, this neighborhood was predominantly populated by the Kurdish population. Kurds are original inhabitants of Syria since Salah ad-Din Ayyubi came. They are spread out in multiple cities and different areas. In Halab, they had two neighborhoods. In Damascus, there's 1 or 2 neighborhoods. In Hama, in Idlib, in Afrin. There are, and also in Qamishli, which is this city right here on the northeast tip of Syria. So after the operations in Halab, which was a swift, quick, clean, relatively very minimal violations, the humanitarian organizations responded very quickly. The government was there. There was a lot of comforting to the people, a lot of videos, a lot of efforts to make sure that people can leave so we can get these fighters out of their underground tunnels and get them out of the city so that people can breathe and be safe. And that happened. It was a mission accomplished. People returned, everybody returned back home a week or 2 later. There was mine sweeping. The city was cleaned up. Immediately the next day, the government started delivering services. It was this story that the central government was saying, listen, we can do it in a very nice, calm way. We don't need to shed blood. We don't need to fight. We can take over the cities and provide safety, security, and it's the community, the NGOs, the civil society, the nonprofits. Everyone is playing a role in bringing back stability. So, at Umran, we published a paper about what are the things that need to be done at our humanitarian organization, Ihsan. We responded. Everyone in the Syrian forum basically responded to provide the immediate services needed. What happened after this is, if you look at the map, I'm going to zoom in. Right next to Halab is Der Hafer. It's a small village that controlled water and electricity access to the city. That, the government could no longer tolerate having the city of Halab, of Aleppo, to be held hostage in any way or shape. So the government took over this place, also with very minimal fighting. There was a lot of effort to put to make sure that we don't have infighting as much as possible. We don't have any violations. There is no war against any Syrian. This is not a war by the regime. We used to be. People make comparisons, unfortunately, unfair comparisons. The former regime had one objective: to kill everybody and to survive. Literally, it's burn the city or nobody. I mean, they were shooting themselves in the foot. This government has consistently approached this in a humanitarian approach, in a collaborative and cooperative approach, to make sure it's yes, we need to reunify all of the territory together, make sure that people are back to normal, to normalize. And this takes time. It's not a press of a button. So the military operation with the administrative, the public services, the NGOs proceeded to cross this part of the Euphrates near Tabaqa all the way to Raqqa, as you see here in the center. And then all of a sudden, local populations who did not want SDF to continue, they defected, they left them. They said, we're no longer fighting with them. And so most of this area to the north east was taken overnight. And SDF basically fell apart. Most of its fighters defected. Only the YPG or PKK fighters are left. And they're stuck in the yellow areas, as you see. The first one to the left is called Ain al-Arab Kobani, which is part of the governorate of Aleppo. And then you have to the northeast, Qamishli, Malkiya, Drbasi, a lot of cities here. And the city of Hasaka has been encircled from the east and the west and the south, and only an opening in the north, going northbound, where the SDF fighters are still there. Now, there were so many attempts to deconflict, de-escalate, make sure that there's no infighting. Again, the main concern is how do we make sure that people are assured of their safety. There were some angry people making mistakes, making violations, but then the majority was, and we had some of our staff and volunteers as well try to help there to calm people's fears and to make sure that we monitor any violations and make sure that things are corrected appropriately. So what happened recently is that there was a series of agreements that were held during the last 2 weeks. January 18 was one of the main ones. January 20, second attempt. January 19, there was a celebration. 18 was a celebration. President Ahmed Shara signed the agreement. General Mazloum Abdi of SDF was supposed to meet the next day and sign it. Then there were rumors that things did not go well. Then there was some military escalation. Then going back to the table, there was a clear attempt by the president to not be perceived as someone going after fighting, to diffuse the conflict, but also show power. So, that was a constant effort to make sure that we reach an agreement that guarantees the safety and security of all Syrians, that ensures rights and civil rights to the Kurdish populations that have been deprived of this since 1962. There are still Kurds that are stateless in Syria, have no rights, and so forth. So immediately, President Shara also issued a presidential decree 13, guaranteeing the rights, the language, the culture, the uh, um, the celebrations of Nowruz, and many others. It's a very nice declaration. It's historic. Hasn't happened since the Ottoman Empire left Syria, and since the independence of Syria. So it was seen as historic, but unfortunately, people at the time of the conflict, and they feel threatened. Some people were spreading rumors. There's a lot of fake news, as Trump says, too much fake news here, what was taking place, and an exaggeration of, oh, there's a massacre. There was no massacre. I mean, there was a military operation, a very surgical, very careful crafting. And finally, I mean, January 18, then January 20, January 28, January 29, January 30, all the way to January 30, there was an announcement finally made. And today, Alhamdulillah, also they began implementing finally. So what was agreed that the governor of Hasake would be appointed by SDF. The SDF will establish three, not divisions, battalions under the divisions that will report to the central government, Ministry of Defense. Ain al-Arab will report to Halab, so they won't be one unit together, and that they will be accepted vetted individually, and they'll join the army. All the administrative units in the Northeast will merge and integrate. The same employees will change hats and report to the government. In Damascus, there will be a head of security who went today to Qamishli and to Ain al-Arab Kobani. So things have been, alhamdulillah, proceeding as we say. We had one of our staff members was in near the city of Hasake, just south of it. Also, our first team from Umran went to Raqqa and Deir Zor, Bukamal, visited most of the areas. We had meetings with local communities. Unfortunately, these places were really left at extreme poverty levels. Although these areas are relatively have more water, there was very little crops grown. Last year was a very bad drought. This year, alhamdulillah, much better. Let's hope we get some more farming done towards the summer. We'll begin to reap the benefits, inshallah, of those rains. And so our team, and then our second team from the Syrian Forum as well, went and also visited a lot of local officials, tried to assess the situation. What are the top priority emergency responses? I hear today there's needs of everything. This is a destroyed place. The roads are broken down, very similar to other areas in Damascus. But in Damascus, the government has been there for a year. They started slowly fixing things up. But this country, my dear brothers and sisters, have been left um, intentionally to decay, to break apart for the last at least 15 years, if not more. They haven't fixed the road. They haven't fixed the light bulb. They haven't fixed the tile in public institutions. Public institutions were deliberately designed to humiliate people, to make sure that they are not treated as humans. When you go to any government office in Damascus or in Northeast that interfaces with local communities, it was an office that was dark, dirty, doesn't look good, very narrow stairs, obviously not handicapped friendly or adaptive for special needs and so forth. Um, it's a city that is underground. It's a country that is way beyond history. And when our team, both the humanitarian and the Umran team, went to talk to local communities in Raqqa and Deir Zor and closer to southern Hasake as well, to the province of Hasake, this is what we heard. Number one was that finally you're late. Why didn't you come in and help us before this? Number two, people were desperate to flip a new page in the history of Syria, and it was the extreme. They hit rock bottom. It was just extremely difficult life situation. Public services at underground. The availability of goods are very limited. The governance that took place in those areas was abusive, there was a military conscription. The images of children, 260 children coming out of the prison in Raqqa, for example, in Aqtan, and the other prisons as well. There was also the issue of the ISIS prisons now, all the way. And this is why, one of the reasons why there was a ceasefire and so forth, because these prisons are real bad criminals sitting in those. That unfortunately have been sitting there, they haven't been tried. Countries have refused to take back their citizens. And now they're making babies and they have kids. Okay, kids are 12-year-olds, 15-year-old, they haven't gone to school. They're going to be a ticking bomb. That's the number one thing I've heard and our teams have heard on the ground. So you have more than 50%. I think the rate in Northeast Syria is about 55% out of the schools. Children have no access to schools for many reasons. One, there was very little funding. The self-administration did not provide the initial services, and they provided them in Kurdish, in a language that local Arab communities could not recognize and could not, and objected to the premises of it, not just the language, but objected to the philosophy, the socialist leftist philosophy that was there. And so there was a lot of people that chose even you're talking ISIS prisons, zero education, but you're talking about, and ISIS prisons, these are family members, wives of people who died with ISIS, children that were 1 year old when ISIS was destroyed in Syria, but they're sitting in prisons. What are they doing? Just sitting there as a ticking bomb. So all these problems started coming, and now the American army is moving some of the prisoners to Iraq, to the Iraqi border, and there was a lot of reshuffling and trying to secure these prisoners, make sure that central government's taking control, taking command of those areas. So it's not one issue that we're looking at. There's a shortage of bread in Hasake and Qamishli, for example, today. There's a shortage of course, electricity is a big shortage everywhere. Access to clean water, access to clean to energy, cooking gas, food products. Everything is back. The infrastructure is completely destroyed. They probably didn't find maybe one or two roads that are drivable in Raqqa, for example. You have about 3.5 million people living in these areas now that are now back to the Syria, that are now of the responsibility of the government to secure, to provide public services, to provide schools and universities. Those areas for the last 50 years, even the former regime, uh, consistently they had oil, they had gas, they had water, farming, etc., but consistently uh, dehumanized them, consistently underdeveloped these areas when they had all the potential to become, great areas of Syria. And I think this is where the programs of the Syrian Forum today collectively can create a systematic impact here. To create the synergy between the emergency response to creating jobs, to education projects. Jobs and education are the main formula to solve a lot of these problems in those areas, and to also get us out of the images of war and killing and mistrust. I think that's one of the issues within the Syrian communities that we have visited in the last 2 weeks in Northeast Syria, is the issue of trust and trust building and comforting, and so you need people who speak the language of the local communities, the cultures. You have Christian communities of different denominations, not even one, and you have also different Arab tribes that you need to make sure that you provide the different assurances that they will be provided a new opportunity, a new life. Now, if you want me to answer in Arabic, of course, يعني, if you have any questions, I don't know if you are going to share questions that Ammar or Hassan, and interrupt me if I'm speaking too long, but I think it's important to recognize now that we have 3.5 million Syrians back to Syria. We have a third of Syria's territory now back after the agreements that were made. The agreement's objective was to de-escalate, deconflict, to provide assurances that your civil rights will be respected, your lives will be honored, that Syria will be united once again. And I think also that leaves one item that has not yet been resolved, which is South Syria, obviously in Suwaida. That's the only area that is now, يعني hopefully will be next to have a non-military solution, hopefully, if there is one. But at least now that the majority of the Syrian territory is back united, the people can travel freely. They have economic opportunities. They need help now urgently, obviously on both a humanitarian, but also to understand what are the needs in those communities, what are the priorities, and what can be done. A lot of government institutions immediately stepped in. Our organization, along with many others, already stepped in to provide humanitarian services. For example, in the city of Ain al-Arab, Kobani, in Halab, this small yellow area where my mouse is here, just on, to the east of Halab, to the north of Raqqa. That area also was a military zone. There's a good number of local communities that are living, that are afraid of military escalation. And so, alhamdulillah, there's now an agreement today. The head of Interior Ministry Security entered those areas with the central government, met with the local communities, the local security, and tried to begin those type of trust building and integration into one Syria. This green part also was, by the way, in the middle between Hasaka and Halab. This is Ras Al Ain and Tal Abyad. Those were with the opposition, with the forces long time ago, for at least 6, 7 years now. These two areas were isolated because they were the only two green spots in the middle of SDF. And so also reconnecting those areas with the rest of Syria, they were like islands surrounded by the Turkish border and then SDF around them. People there were stuck. They can't go to Turkey. They can't go to Damascus. And those areas have a lot of wheat in it, by the way. They grow a lot of wheat. They have water. And so, it was very important to reunite Syria's territory and to reintegrate public services together and to also reintegrate into one army. So, alhamdulillah, hopefully your next trip you're able to travel to those areas safely. And that's
عندي
اتفضل
في
العربي بالنسبة لي
سؤال
أسهل.
وصلنا حاليا. هو عم نسمع بالأخبار إنه هناك نزوح جديد في شمال الشرق سوريا. إذا في مجال توضح لنا الأمر. Well, translation is we are hearing from the news that there is displacement from the northeast of Syria. If you can explain this.
Historically, there are a good number of camps in those areas. There were people who, when the operation happened in this green zone here, Tel Abyad and Ras Al Ain, there were people who left those areas that want to go back now. But this was a long, 5, 6 years ago. Also, people from Afrin on the northwest tip here left to those areas. Also, people from Damascus, from Halab, Homs, when the revolution was taking place, they went to areas that had no bombing and no airplanes, and so they went to northeast. During the last 2 weeks, some people were afraid, and so they left areas of conflict. There was areas of conflict in Kobani, Ain al-Arab here in this yellow area. So some people left to other areas, to safer neighborhoods. But alhamdulillah, now one of the things they wrote down in the ceasefire and the de-escalation agreements is that people have the right to be safely returned to their homes. And I think that's one of the most happy endings that you can, hopefully it will continue to be like this in the next few days. So far it's been holding better than any of the previous agreements. But it seems like there was a lot of pressure done by the US and by KRG region in Iraq, by President Barzani in Iraq. And a lot of work has been done by a lot of interlocutors, mediators, to really pressure the SDF to turn its political demands into political demands and not have them as a military tool. basically to break apart, and say, okay, the military can go into the Syrian military, and the political demands, you're entitled to continue your political demands, but in the new parliament, in the new way, without having the military next to you holding people hostage. So I think that's the gist of the agreement, is that there was a realization by SDF that it's game over, but also the president of Syria um, did not want to present them with a bad exit. He wanted to give them a chance to be part of the new Syria, and so that we don't have losers in this game. We don't have a bad and a good. And the president was saying, let's flip the page. Let's think about reconstruction. Let's think about giving people hope. And now you have Declaration 13, presidential decree, which grants a lot of the demands that the Kurdish populations have requested and have demanded for many years. At least there's a way, there's a path, there is a roadmap that you can continue your demands politically. So a lot of the people that were displaced are, I think, as a result of those agreements, are supposed to start going back to their homes. And also, even more, people who were displaced to northeast Syria in the last 10 years have now the opportunity to go back to their homes. People in Afrin have their homes still standing, for example. People in Tel Abyad and Ras Al Ain, in this green area right here, have the ability to go back to their homes.
So speaking about the green area, is it still under the Turkish, or do we have any kind of power as a Syrian government on that green area?
Yes, the Syrian government controls it. There are still some Turkish troops, but they have been relocating. I mean, in the last few weeks, as the agreements have been implemented, the Turks have been trying to reposition, relocate, and then hand over to the Syrian military. I mean, that's the agreements that there are talks between Syria and Turkey to reposition Turkish forces as needed. I mean, eventually everybody agrees, both Syria and Turkey, that eventually we don't need foreign troops on the ground. The Americans will be withdrawing soon. They've announced it. They're planning to it for many domestic reasons in the U.S. that you're familiar with in the U.S. They already have a roadmap in Iraq, and I'm sure that there is a roadmap also as well in Syria. And they want regional countries to take ownership. And I think this is an opportunity for Syria to prosper. Hopefully, it has a great opportunity to come back again and become better than what it was before.
كمان سؤال in Arabic, so which is سمعنا اليوم إن قوات الأمن السورية عم بتفوت الحسكة وكوباني، وبنفس الوقت تصريحات إنه قوات الأمن ما راح تفوت المدن والقرى الكردية.
انت وين قريت السؤال؟ ما شفته المجموعة.
We do have a different channel. Some people
Oh,
are
okay.
sending on a site, so.
Sure. I mean, eventually, the قوات الأمن, the security forces will enter every city. The initial agreement to establish trust is that today they entered into Ain al-Arab Kobani in this area. Can you see my mouse, by the way, or no?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So this area and on that I'm pointing to, today they entered it, and also Hasake, the city of Hasake, because there's the province of Hasake is much bigger, but the city and the city of Qamishli. And they will go in to assess the integration of the local security that was controlled previously by SDF. They will vet people and recruit them into the security, and then it will gradually expand to cover all the areas. That was the agreement, and it was a tough agreement, but I think they reached it finally. Hopefully, it will be implemented. Today is a good sign. What happened today is I think a very good sign of the entrance of the security. They were greeted well. They went in. They took control of and I think tomorrow, Monday and Tuesday, they will start taking there are 2 or 3 Rmelan here and Swediya, which are two oil wells in this yellow area near Qamishli. So those are also good signs. There's also the airport of Qamishli, the border with Iraq, Simalka with KRG, Kurdistan is important to be retaken. Those are in the next few days. So we will see them happening, inshallah, in the next 2 or 3 days maximum. And that will gradually expand to cover all the areas. So they are not going to be restricted in one area versus the other. All of the areas will be controlled by a central security agency, so that, and the head of security was agreed to be appointed by the government. The deputy defense minister will be nominated by SDF. The governor of Hasaka will be nominated by SDF, approved by the government. So there was an agreement of a few nominees that will, continue Did I answer the question, Akhi Ammar? ولا في سؤال تاني؟
I think yes, you did, and we do have more questions in the Q&A section, which is from Mr. Mazen Ayubi. He says, "What is the difference between Kurdish Workers' Party (PKK) and Syrian Democratic Forces (SDF), referred to the QSD/Qasad in Kurdish? What's the history of each and years that they have been in existence?"
جميل. اهلا وسهلا استاذنا الحبيب، استاذنا وعمنا الحبيب استاذ مازن. PKK is يعني حزب العمال الكردستاني، هو حزب تركي. It's a Turkish terrorist organization, has been fighting the Turkish government for the last 40, 50 years. It's a transnational cross-border organization. It has counterparts in Iraq, in Iran, and in Syria. And it's a very leftist, communist ideology, and also registered as a terrorist organization by the US. Now, when ISIS came in and established their so-called alleged Khilafah, and the United States announced in 2015 the international coalition to counter ISIS, and about 80 countries, now 90, is Syrian state is the 90th state to join. At that time, the US, for many reasons, that's part of what this whole thing happened, but the US basically decided to create something called Syrian Democratic Forces, because they could not convince Turkey to recruit PKK that are terrorists. So they told PKK, you cannot join under the hat of PKK, but let's do a rebranding and let's call it SDF, Syrian Democratic. And they called it democratic because the term is nice. It's regardless, they weren't democratic, but they called it democratic. And they created a coalition. SDF had a lot of Arab fighters from the local tribes, had Christian fighters from the Sorotos, the Syrian, and had other remnants, and lately even took former regime Assad fighters as well, فلول يعني, after December 8th. So this was one of the demands of the central government, is that we're not going to accept these people are going to jail. And a lot of them were captured from the former regime who were fighting along SDF. But today SDF broke apart, and what's left of the SDF, the Christians were out, the Arabs were out. What's left of the SDF territorially is only this yellow area, as you see here in the northeast, and this small tip in Arab Kobani on the map. And what's left militarily is probably 10, 15,000, maybe 10,000, they say. And that's why these 10,000 will be split into 3 military groups, and they will report to a central division that will be based in Hasake, governed by the Ministry of Defense of the Syrian government. So that's the difference between SDF. SDF was a rebranding, but also included non-PKK. But now it's back to its origin, which is just PKK, which is only one component of the Kurdish political parties that exist in Syria and in other countries. Now, the PKK is also doing a peace agreement with the Turkish government in Turkey, which is very much related, because what happens in the Turkish border influences what happens on the Syrian border and vice versa. and what happens in Iraq and Iran also affects what happens. And so, yani, let's not underestimate also the difficulty of this situation and a very delicate situation that you do something here, it influences Kurds in Turkey. You do something in Turkey, it influences here, and things are very difficult. And President Shara was really maneuvering with the Americans, the Turks, the Iraqis, and no access, of course, to the Iranians. The Iranians have their own mess and things to worry about. Alhamdulillah, we got rid of them in Syria. So those are this is, I think, I hope I explained what's the difference between PKK and SDF. But today, what's
تمام.
left of SDF, again, it's disintegrated, it's back to roots. It's only the PKK. There are some questions here in the webinar chat. Are you asking me those or no?
No, I'm asking the Q&A, but I'm going through by time order. So we do
طيب.
have one before Lama and before Ala. So we do have from an anonymous attendee, what's the current conditions and status of the Dijla River? It's hardly mentioned in the last year and during the past 15 years during the revolution.
لا Dijla crosses over Syrian territory very little. يعني it's in the north. It's like right here, Dijla. What we have is the Furat, not Dijla. The Furat is right here. It's this year, Alhamdulillah, is a good year because of the rain and all that. But in the last few years, unfortunately, because there was a corrupt government in Damascus and no one to talk to the Turks. Both the Euphrates and the Dijla are controlled. They come out from springs and sources in Turkey, and Turkey has built so many dams. And I mean, water is a huge, as you know, water is the cause of a lot of conflicts around the world, and water is a major file that the Syrian government will need to, and the Iraqi government, by the way, will need to renegotiate it with the country, with the government of Turkey. But alhamdulillah, this year at least, because of the rain season, it's been one of the best, the most barakah seasons um, in many years. Last year was the worst drought in 20 years, they say. So Dijla is crosses over the Syrian territory uh, at the very, very, very tip, very small. So we don't have a lot of impact of it. It really goes into Iraq more than Syria. It crosses right here, Dijla. But Furat again is right here. تفضل حبيبي.
Tamam. So we have the last two questions because we promised to stay within 45 minutes for this breaking news session. We'll try to answer as brief as possible. Um, so Mazen Ayubi again is saying, are there any plans to connect northeast cities by rails?
I hope so. I think يعني, it will take us time, but of course, I mean, connectivity is the term of the century. Connectivity is what will bring Syria to become a true country, is connecting all these areas, not just by airplanes, but by rail, by good highways, and to have good transportation between them. I see a question by Ala about SF. Why don't we end with this, if you don't mind,
Yeah,
Habib?
but that's a question. But that's what I'm closing with Ala and Lama because more or less it's the same thing. But I just got a very interesting question, which is هل ستتحسن الكهرباء قريبا بعد سيطرة الحكومة على سد الفرات وحقول النفط وبعد تشغيلها؟ هل سينخفض سعر الكهرباء الحالية؟ متى تتوقع ذلك؟
والله يعني بدك تجاوب بالعربي ولا بالانجليزي؟ السؤال بالعربي.
بالياباني بالشيء يعني بالطريقة I think عربي يمكن is fine as far as I can see most of the attendees are Arab.
والله يعني the electricity is not about only about oil. First of all, most of the oil wells need a lot of investments, a lot of infrastructure. They're destroyed. You can only get 10, 15% out of it, of what its capacity is. And those are the numbers now set by the government for Sadd al-Raqqa and Tabaqa and so forth, which provides some electricity. There's a lot of fixing to some of the mechanics there that requires a couple, maybe a few tons of millions of dollars, they say. Each one costs, I think, $10 million to fix. And they have a lot of those عنفات بيسموهم مهندسين بيعرفوهم
Mm,
مضروبين.
mm,
So it's not a button, no, wallah, oh, we got northeast Syria, everything's going to be flowery and back again. The government is in constant talks to Chevron, to Shell, to a lot of companies to come in and invest quickly. They're looking into so many options. They've established companies to be able to absorb investments quickly. But I hope that in a year or two, they'll start at least investing in those areas. We're not a very oil rich, but at least those areas will, يعني بتسند, يعني it will just at least provide something. The other problem is that the electricity grid that we have is out of date and is broken up. It's full of, it's مقطوعة, مسروقة. There's a lot of waste in the electric grid in all over Syria, in Damascus, and everywhere. And there is a waste. It's out of date completely, and the electric plants in Syria are out of date. I don't, yani, they're saying we are by and in Damascus and major cities today, electricity is better than a year ago. But people want everything overnight, and it's not going to happen, unfortunately. But things have improved. I mean, I used to get electricity 4 hours a day. I think now we get it 6 to 8 hours, depending on where you live in
great.
Syria. But
Yeah,
it's not 24 hours again. So, and I think it's better not to go 24. We need to support people to have solar and other alternative energies, because on the long run, we don't have enough to sustain all this. And we don't, the government of Syria does not want to borrow loans and to continue to subsidize things and to go in the deficit, because that's not good for production. That's not good for reconstruction. And if you're talking about the Syrian Forum and what we do to contribute, I mean, part of it is the number one thing that people need to do are experts, are advice, and not advice from visitors who come in, but on the ground, constant, regular visits and advice. We had meetings with the Central Planning Agency in Damascus. They need help, a lot of help. They are getting some help, but I mean, we're probably going to sign an agreement between the Syrian Forum and the Central Planning and Bureau of Statistics to provide assessment of these areas. But also we've been helping a lot of different ministries, and they've been doing a lot of work day in and day out. I know a lot of people in government that sleep in their offices, and work is round the clock, 7 days all the time. So also, yani, as you know, our priorities at the Syrian Forum: education and jobs. Jobs in areas that are farming and livelihood. You need to help them to grow seed, to farm their lands, to grow more things this year, hopefully. And for education is to also help fix schools, help local communities. We have an office in Deir ez-Zor. We have been one of the early organizations that immediately after December 8th decided to go to Deir ez-Zor. Deir ez-Zor is 80% as a city and the suburbs, 80% destroyed. And alhamdulillah, we've supported the local governor and the governorate in their priorities. We helped them in the priorities. We also did that in Deir ez-Zor, a training of people who are physically disabled or physically incapable, to allow the government institutions to hire them in jobs that are appropriate. We've provided a training center and provided the training. And this is supported by one of the Syrian American community members. So those are things that are very key, and they create quick impact where you turn people from immediately from being beggars to become producers and to have a job of their own, even if they're physically disabled. And this was done in Deir ez-Zor, a city that has been 80% destroyed. We have tried to do a lot of surgical interventions that are key, and this is where our assessment and studies at Umran, the humanitarian, the economic empowerment, and the education fits in together to create pilots of success and high impact in different areas. حكيت كتير شو.
تمام. احنا تقريبا وصلنا لنهاية السيشن, so we are almost there because we promised to stay within the 45 minutes. We started to 10 Eastern time. With that, I would like to thank Dr. Ammar Al-Tahaf for the great information. And I think the session will be uploaded to YouTube as soon as possible once it's ready from the technical team and from the media team. We will be meeting you again, inshallah, all of you. Stay tuned next first Sunday from March. We will not stop in Ramadan, inshallah. We will continue on Ramadan Mubarak ahead of time. Thank you again, Dr. Ammar, for joining us for today, and we hope to see you all soon, inshallah.
أهلا وسهلا. Thank you very much, everyone. And I'm sorry
Assalamu
if I
alaikum.
didn't answer
Yep.
any of the questions.
We answered all of them. We answered all of them.
خلاص.
Alhamdulillah. Thank you. Thank you. Jazakallah khair.
على عيني
Assalamu
على عيني يا
alaikum.
رب. وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.